Hey guys, how are ya? Welcome to Multicam podcast number 4 or 5, is it, Joe?
Loves flexing the multicam.
6? I'm probably going to be in a year going Multicam podcast number 2700. You know, who knows? Today, guys, I've got a really exciting guest in, Jenny Williams. Hi, Jenny.
Hi.
Hey.
It's an honour to have you in here. You've got a wealth of knowledge when it comes to marketing, and have been in many high-level CMO roles, throughout your career so far, and I think had some impact on the businesses that you've worked for, and have a lot of value I think you can offer to our listeners. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for taking the time out of your day and coming in.
That's all right.
Cool.
I'm happy.
How's your morning? Oh, and sorry that your cat can't join us.
Yeah.
Now,
What's its name again?
Why?
Eunice,
Eunice.
Cool.
Eunice,
right.
Eunice is the Zoom cat.
Is Eunice okay?
Eunice is fine. It's just that she thought it was on Zoom, and she doesn't usually travel into offices. Yeah.
Like sit on your keyboard.
No, she sits on my lap.
Oh, perfect.
nice try, Joe.
There's been a lot of Zoom meetings lately,
A lot
right?
of Zoom meetings.
It's-
Yeah. She's made it onto 3 org charts
Yeah.
so far.
Cool.
Yeah. Been appointed, officially elected to positions. It's
Well, we'll have to make sure you let her know that she'll be welcome in next time. Okay, you can bring her in. She can run around the office and scratch things.
Okay.
So, what was the reason you got into marketing in the first place? Do you think, Jenny? What started the whole kind of thing off?
I mean, I started my career out of uni in technology, and then the internet started in about 93, and I sort of saw something that I thought was interesting, and so I actually retrained, though that was probably unnecessary at the time, in all these multimedia applications, because I thought you had to work your way up from coder to whatever, but actually it turns out not.
Yes.
And that led me to multimedia. And then at some point in time, I discovered that I could make twice as much money in advertising.
Yes.
So that's the reason I became a marketer, if
Yeah,
you
cool.
like.
Yep.
And that was that was sort of right in the dot-com boom days.
Yes.
So there was a lot of money and a lot of excitement and a lot of hype.
Yep.
And then I ran agencies, and then there was the dot-com crash, which was a lot of pain and grief.
Yes.
But throughout most of that, I ran agencies, came back to Australia in 2000. So most of the other stuff was either in the UK or the States, and then came back to Australia in 2000, and the internet was just nowhere near at the same place in Australia back then. So I probably spent 10 years just trying to convince people to use digital.
Yep.
And sort of migrated into consulting, digital strategy consulting, once people started spending money and didn't know how to spend it.
Yes.
And then was recruited into the CMO type roles in about 2014, I think.
Yep.
And that was more, a broader marketing remit. So that's how does digital integrate, but many of those roles were very digitally led, which meant, how do you make it really work with brand and digital and, sort of performance media and so forth.
Yes.
So, yeah, that was my transition into marketing. And I'm not sure where along that continuum marketing started, advertising stopped and marketing started, and digital kind of...
There's a pretty big overlap, right?
There's huge.
Yeah. Without one or the other, neither of them exist. They're kind of both required.
Well, yeah, I remember sitting in a meeting, many years ago, where one of the world's largest media agencies, global multinational group, they had these econometricians that had done this model where basically the client puts in all of these details about their brand and, etc. And then it'll determine what percentage of the budget needs to be put to each of the different channels. And they actually had to formulate this gizmo that popped up that had like a slider bar that looked like it was doing something, because it was basically an Excel spreadsheet.
Yes.
And it didn't do anything. But the net result, no matter what you put in, was 5% for digital,
Yes.
right? And it was
Right.
it just didn't matter what you put in.
And what year was this?
This would have been maybe 2004, 2005, maybe. And what's been interesting to see is how marketing has shifted, into digital actually being the driver.
95%.
Well, it depends on what sort of brand you are. You could
Yes.
spend quite a lot on brand, but the importance of getting digital right within the context of an entire marketing spend has become critical.
Yes.
And you basically can't do marketing if you don't get how to use it.
Yes.
And that's, I think, the sort of shift.
Yeah, definitely. The numbers, reflect that, right? When you look at the increase in spend on digital marketing. What's
Yeah.
it at in Australia at the moment? Is it 8? I think it's 8 billion.
It's a great question. No idea.
Yeah.
8 billion it's reached, which is, and it's, I think it was 2012. It took over Yellow Pages. So.
Well, Yellow Pages is another story altogether. I worked on that brand for a while.
Oh, really? You did?
Yeah, they loved the book.
Yeah, okay.
They loved the book. It was a
Yeah,
good
they
old
s-
revenue earner. And
They held on to that, right? They didn't want to
did.
let it go.
yeah, and it was being used as monitor stands for many years.
And a weapon by the police,
stops,
apparently.
Yeah.
You know, the cops used to beat you with a phone book. Have you heard that one? Yeah.
Yeah.
Or a doorstop, exactly.
Yeah.
You don't see them anymore, do you, phone books?
I think, though, the other interesting thing that I've seen happen is the importance on data, right? So, at first it was just, okay, let's just advertise in these digital channels because we think they'll work, you know. And then as the industry evolved and became more sophisticated, it was more about, well, what's the data you're using to manage that or target within that?
Yes. Sorry about that.
And that was always the issue, I suppose, with historical marketing or whatever the word is, TV, radio, billboard, classical marketing, is that you couldn't ever track what that was doing for your brand.
Yeah,
well,
there's-
that's not entirely true. So and I say that because when you apply some of the theoretical models of digital marketing to brand marketing, it sort of shifts, right? So I was the CMO at Comparethemarket for a number of years, and we had this asset, which was the meerkats.
I remember the ads. They were
You
cool.
can never forget the ads.
Yes.
They're still running, they're
right.
famous ads, and but at the time I remember given, it wasn't insignificant. We paid a percentage of our media to the UK for the right to use them. They were CGI generated, so they cost, millions of dollars to make the ads and took 6 months, and it was not an insignificant investment in brand.
Yes.
And I was given the option to get rid of them.
Yes.
So looking at the role of, the above the line media and these assets needed to be a quantifiable exercise. And the things that you can do within that, so we got to a point through, brand analysis that people loved these furry things, right? The brand love was off the charts. I've never seen it like that.
Yes.
But, number one, nobody knew it was a comparison site. They just knew it was a meerkat ad.
Yes.
And number two, it was trying to achieve a lot in an ad without actually successfully achieving anything that it was trying to do. And we sort of got to this point where we realised we were paying a lot less for branded search than we were for generic search.
Yes.
If those ads could achieve one thing, and that was to increase the volume of branded search over generic search, then they would pay for themselves.
Yes.
Because of the volume we were spending in search.
Yes. The brand awareness.
The brand
right.
awareness. And so by doing, proper quantitative analysis on it, we were able to determine what the value of the advertising was. And in terms of figuring out whether channels work or they don't, you have to be at the big end of town, but you can turn off channels in particular areas so that you can measure what the difference is.
What
Yes.
happens?
As long as you've got longitudinal trends
Yes.
that say at this time of year this is what's likely to happen, and
Yes.
we've got, radio running in this market and not in that market. We've got outdoor running in this market and not that market.
Yes.
And none of it's an exact science, but it starts to inform your thinking. So it's not completely finger in the air.
Yes.
But I also remember when I was running Tribal DDB, I picked up, one of our biggest clients was McDonald's, right? And at the time, I, pick up the phone and I'm talking to the CMO of McDonald's, and I'm trying to convince him to invest in digital. And he's sort of like, well, you know what? And I knew this guy from previous agency experience. He said, you know what, Jen? I put ads on TV and I sell burgers.
Makes sense. It's that simple.
And it was a really tough, thing
Tough sell.
to argue at the time,
Yeah, you can't argue with that.
You can't.
Yeah, it just works.
It just works,
Yeah.
So sometimes it's actually that simple. So I don't think it's ever going to be an all digital
Yes.
kind of proposition, because other channels play a role.
Yeah, right.
And they play an important role. You just need to know what is that role and make sure that what you execute creatively in those channels actually achieves what it is you're trying to do. But the bottom line about digital is it's always the last place people end up
Right.
before they convert.
Right.
So even if you're sort of saying, we think TV advertising works better, well, you better be number one in SEO
Yeah.
and not have any competitors
With
who are
ads
bidding above you.
Yeah.
If you're going to make the last mile
Right.
work,
Certainly, the integration you need both,
Yeah.
right? You really can't get away with just doing offline marketing without having an online presence, right? People
Yeah.
are gonna look you up.
And I think that's the thing I've noticed. Even if you take TV and radio, like the expensive above the line channels, out and say, well, we're going to drive all this PR, or we're going to drive all this social viral stuff, or whatever it is you say you're going to do, and then assume that means you don't have to do any of that. And I go into these startups and they've got these, projections of where they think they're going to go, but nobody's actually looked at what that search cost is going to be.
Yes.
What is your CPA?
Yes.
What are you actually realistically going to have to pay to
a
get the
customer.
click?
Right. Yes.
Which is ultimately going to translate to a website visit, which is, then got this huge freaking drop-off rate before you convert.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is a whole other ball of wax. But,
Yep.
it's interesting that they just don't put any marketing dollars into their forecast plan
Yes.
and somehow think that magically, 100,000
Yeah.
customers
Sales
are
are
going
going
to
to
come
make
because we're really good.
yeah, because
Which
we want
they may be, but it doesn't
because they
matter.
know how much we want their money, and so they'll just give it to us, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, back when you said you were talking about at the start and people starting to spend on digital. What was that around? Was that Google Ads, do you think, primarily, or was it just building websites generally?
Well, there was a lot of investment in building sites.
Yep.
And the site technology evolved. So there was I guess in the really early days, there was a lot of agencies that would set up bespoke content management systems and then
Yes.
lock you into some relationship that was, sort of
Yeah, you're stuck with them.
terminally unpleasant for everybody. But then, as more legitimate CMS systems started to become more mainstream, then that became major investments
Yes.
in, technology platforms, which then meant people gave a bit of a thought to, UX, UI,
Yep.
customer design, all that sort of stuff. So that's a huge bucket of money, but typically not coming out of the marketing budgets.
Yes.
In marketing, in the really early days, paid search wasn't big.
Yes.
It was mostly banner ads.
Yep.
So there was a lot of that. And, there was then of course paid search and social started to come on, and you had a lot of people who operated in social but not paid, so very much organic.
Yes. Sorry, Jenny. Can you please, because that that client of ours needs to get out of the car park.
Sure. Be right back.
Sorry, Joe. Thanks, man, because I've given my car park key to Rossi. All good. See,
No
we're
worries.
very casual here.
All good.
Thanks, Jenny.
Want to get me
Yeah.
a coffee?
Yeah, sorry. You were interrupted.
No, that's all right. I was just going to say the early social was really an interesting evolution.
Yes.
You had a whole bunch of people who had been, had early Twitter accounts and early Facebook accounts and positioned themselves as social media gurus.
Yes.
and it was mostly around strategies to drive community or whatever, and that was seen as this very separate channel.
Yes.
Only a specialist could advise on.
Yep.
But then, of course, once the social platforms really launched legitimate paid offerings, it sort of melded much more into, the digital spend.
Yes, traditional publisher platform marketing, like
Yeah.
ad spend and
Yeah.
returns. And
And then I guess the evolution of more sophisticated MarTech platforms
yes.
has then evolved it further,
Yep.
so you can automate so much of that.
Yes.
And then what the differentiator tends to come down to whether or not you've got the skills either through outsource or internally to actually get the most out of the platform.
Right.
So there's an enormous number of companies that have got a frickin' Ferrari,
Yes.
and realistically, to follow the analogy through, they never drive it out of the driveway, or they don't drive it over 20 kilometres an hour.
Yes.
So that's that's probably the biggest thing. There's a lot of investment in MarTech,
Yep.
but whether or not they are using it is another.
Yeah, that's something that here we have the amount of subscriptions that we've got at the moment, because we're just testing things out constantly, because there are platforms that will improve the performance of of your ads, right? And they can take a 2-hour job and turn it into a 2-minute job. And as an agency, if we're spending that 2 hours every day, all day to get that thing done, that we can get done in 2 minutes, and the only way to discover whether or not there's software out there that will do that for you is by
To do it. Yeah.
trying them all, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of platforms, MarTech platforms, know that people want to try them first now, and they're offering those sort of free trials.
Yeah.
So that helps, but you forget to cancel them when they don't
I
work.
do that too. I do my budgets every month. It's like, oh Jesus, why have I've been subscribing to that one for like 4 months and I
Haven't
can't
used
remember
it.
the last time I used it.
I think very often as well, people come in with one job that they want to get done.
Yes.
And you only ever scratch the surface with a lot of what these softwares can do.
Yep.
Yeah.
But because you don't, unknown unknowns, you're not looking for the other things that
Yes.
these softwares can provide you.
Well, and it is, what's interesting about that is, so a lot of the work I do when I did when I was a consultant and I now do as a consultant is develop marketing strategies, right? So you're right, somebody comes in with some sort of simplified objective, which is we need to increase our sales, and we think that's by, doing X. The reality of it is that very few things in marketing are these big game changers. It's actually a series of incremental things which go all the way from, are you even targeting the right people with the right message, through to how are you converting them and is that working, and then how do you retarget them and keep them in the loop, and
Yes.
once you get them, how do you make sure that you get more value out of
Yeah,
them?
how do you retain them and re-engage them? How do you get them to keep coming
And-
back?
That especially the retargeting, re-engaging's primarily digital, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the trick that most people miss. They just do scattergun over and over and over and over. And the reality of it is, so going back to the TV analogy, right? You have a sort of minimum frequency, right? So you would never buy TV that just shows the ad once to a group of people. Like, that would be a complete waste of money.
Yes.
And so you're always looking for your frequency metrics.
Yes.
And the reality in digital is that frequency metrics are expensive if you're just doing it in a spray and pray.
Yes.
But the retargeting enables you to do that. Now, obviously, the shifts in cookies and all that sort of thing mean you've got a shorter window to do that in, and
Yes.
you've got to be more careful, and you have to have the MarTech to enable you to do it.
Yes.
But looking at how you go about doing that, whether that's getting email addresses,
Yes.
right? Like, if you can find a way to get somebody's email address even if they don't want to buy from you,
Yes.
then all of a sudden you've got an opportunity to remarket to them.
Yeah. Right.
And-
we were talking about that just recently. The power of data. And that's especially now because of the things that you can do with the digital platforms that are available to us is hugely powerful, right?
But you've also got to understand your customer, which is, I think, the other thing I see a lot of companies don't do.
Yes.
They say, I've got this, I want to sell it.
Yes.
But that actually doesn't matter
No.
at all.
Yeah. Why would somebody want to buy this?
Why would somebody want to buy it?
Yep.
Yeah. And what are the barriers to them buying it? And, what's the toe in the water thing that you need to provide in order to get them to part with any of their data?
Yes.
before they'll, so they may not be ready to buy, but if they're, willing to download something, or they're willing to do a trial, or they're willing to, if you can give them something.
Yes.
So I think that audience analysis is the other thing that, a lot of companies don't do well. The really big companies do.
Yes.
And, but it's more complicated at the smaller end of town because it's, it could be expensive if you, want to do it, go the whole 9 yards.
Do it properly, and make the most out of what you could make out of it. I remember, Jenny, a few years ago now, us having a conversation about programmatics, and that's still the thing, right? Is that still something that you see as something people are using?
Yeah, I mean, programmatic matters, and that fits into the frequency bucket.
Yep.
I think with some of the shifts in, the two things I notice about programmatic is a lot of media agencies don't frequency cap.
Yes.
So what happens is they say, oh, yeah, we're going to start retargeting, and then you basically spam people
Yes.
for as long as you possibly can. Which
I've seen that as kind of a good thing for us. I like that people sometimes say to me, man, I just can't get away from your freaking ads. They just follow me everywhere and have been following me for months.
Well, the only issue is if they've been following you for months and you haven't done anything, chances are you're not going to.
Yeah, that's true. But it's what we sell, so it's a unique position, I suppose. It's good that we show that we're aggressive, but it wouldn't work in every industry, in every instance.
No, it doesn't work in every industry. And I guess that comes back to the customer thing too, because if you understand what the customer's, purchase cycle actually is, sometimes people aren't ready for something.
Mm-hmm.
They don't need it right now.
Yes.
But you want to make sure that when they do need it,
they come to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a balance. And that's all sort of brand awareness stuff, but it's always a balance between where should we spend our money on prospecting or on, nailing the guys that we've got. Yeah,
cool. So bottom of the funnel kind of higher intent. There's an interesting graphic that I remember seeing. Joe, I've showed this to you. I think we've talked about it before, where you've got, the maybe the 3% of the people who are going to buy your product or your service within the next 12 months that are going to buy it now.
Yeah.
And then there's the other 97% of people who might buy it within the next 6 to 12 months.
Yeah.
And really exactly kind of what you're talking about is trying to get those people engaged with your business on some level now, so that when they do decide to sort of reach that action threshold and look to make a transaction, then that they come to you at that stage.
Yeah.
That's something that.
Yeah.
And kind of the most obvious example of that is these free downloads that you see on social media, right? They've kind of taken off. You see them all the time on Facebook. I think, it's just become more and more prevalent, where you've got five easy ways to lose weight without having to lift a finger or, whatever it is. I'd probably download that book, by the way. And then you get them into the email funnel.
Yeah.
But even now with iOS 15 update, maybe you've read something about that, Jenny. The Apple's blocking you from being able to see whether or not you open, or your email's been opened. So iOS 14 was blocking the activity like purchase behavior through Facebook or Google. And now iOS 15, I think, is targeted at emails.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens there.
Well, yeah. And look, it's a funny old argument, isn't it? Like I have friends who are completely paranoid about the data thing.
Yeah.
And, there's just this part of me that just goes, would you rather have unqualified ads?
Right.
Yeah,
if you're going to see ads anyway.
Do you really want us not to be as targeted, or you do? So, but it's definitely the direction it's going in terms of how marketing works, which kind of means you need to give people an incentive to actively engage with your brand.
Yes.
In a permission-based way.
Yes.
So that you can continue and have a respectful relationship with them around, the messaging that you give them beyond that.
Yeah, cool. Rather than kind of clickbaiting them into a landing page and just bombing them with ads.
Correct.
After that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think that's the essence of where the platforms are going.
Yes.
I think there's likely to be bounce back on some of it though, you know, because it has an immediate impact on the effectiveness of the channel from a marketing perspective.
Certainly.
You think people are moving towards a more integrity focused?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I did a bunch of work. I used to, I was the CMO at ADMA for a while, and I worked on their regulatory affairs component, and privacy is a huge part of it. I mean, years ago, God, I can't even remember when it was, but through ADMA again, I worked on the e-marketing code of practice for the anti-spam legislation when they first brought the anti-spam legislation in Australia. And the research was interesting because there's all these people that are incredibly anti, you know, like it astounded me that people could be so inflamed by receiving an email, you know,
Yes.
whereas it's kind of like, well, okay, just delete it. But anyway,
Yeah.
no, apparently
This
not.
is my privacy. This is
This
my,
is my
you know.
privacy. How did you get my email?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm going to spend the next, 10 days
Yeah,
spamming, complaining about it. But anyway, so, what the essence of that one was really about protecting people's right not to be contacted if they didn't want to be. And I think all regulation is moving more towards trying to maintain the integrity of the connection. So, if you've got a legitimate reason to talk to me, then fine.
Yes.
And more of an opt-in model as opposed to a
Absolutely.
opt-out model.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that is definitely where regulation prefers things to be.
Okay.
Yep.
And if you think about it in some ways from a marketing perspective, as a marketer, I would much rather talk to people that want to hear from me than people that don't.
Right.
Like it's cheaper.
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
So-
You're not paying to show ads to people who are
aren't
going to get
interested.
resentful about seeing
Yeah,
them, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it is balanced against the people that just have no idea you exist.
Yes.
And you want to be sure that they have the opportunity to learn that you exist.
Yes.
But yeah, it's a sort of partially it's an attitudinal thing, and then you've got all this sort of technology and regulation, which is
Yeah.
changing the way the interface works.
So if anything,
Yeah,
Apple is a bit ahead of the curve with that at the moment,
Potentially,
Are they not creating the curve?
yeah,
potentially.
yeah.
Seems like it.
I guess they've got some other play up their sleeve.
Some agenda.
They
Yeah.
always do.
Yeah,
You think trying to create their own kind of ecosystem,
Yeah.
where they have their own advertising platform maybe, or
it
right,
wouldn't surprise
their
me.
own marketplace and their own Bitcoin or their own
Well, I mean, it's tough to track Facebook ads unless you track them in the ad platform.
yes,
So you put branch links in, something like that, then there's an issue with the trackback stuff on it. So, they're all of these ecosystems are, formulating. And if you go down the Adobe route, then you're dealing with Adobe data. And if you go down the Google route, you're dealing with Google data, like they all do it.
yes,
And in an ideal world, they'd all speak a common language and talk to each other and we could achieve much more. But
yes.
the
they don't.
business model gets in the way of that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's kind of a fight for power, right? That's really
Yeah.
and information is power in
Correct.
today's world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it speaks to another issue which occurred to me a minute ago when we were talking, and that is the reporting, like your ability to track what's happening. And, I've seen very few in my entire career, I've seen very few organisations that actually have the ability to efficiently and accurately track data.
Right.
Like, number one, none of the numbers add up.
Yes.
There's...
Oh well, like we've seen that if you you've got an e-commerce store and you've made $100,000 in sales one month, and you're running ads on both Google and Facebook, they both try to take credit for 70,000 of that, right?
Yeah.
Because of attribution, I suppose.
Well, attribution in and of itself is a bit of a
problem.
Yeah, it's like a unicorn,
Yes.
I've, again, spent hundreds of thousands of dollars with econometricians trying to build attribution models and,
Yes.
it ultimately it's all educated guesswork.
Yeah.
Well, because you don't know why a human being
Does what they do.
right? We don't know why we do what we do, let alone someone else trying to figure out
Yeah.
why we do what we do.
I mean, it is worth, it is absolutely worth trying to attribute, so I'm not suggesting you should
It's a waste of
forget
time.
it. It's a waste of time.
Yeah.
But you can go down a rabbit hole with it,
Yes.
particularly if you want the numbers to match up exactly,
At the end. Yeah.
because they're just not going to, And so there's still an element in digital, and I think it's, reflecting on the beginning of the industry versus where we're at now. In the beginning, the data, the attribution, the trackability, they were the big selling points of using digital. And I think we've actually shot ourselves in the foot with it, because now we have too much data. It doesn't add up. We're drowning in data in terms of reporting data. And many organisations still don't actually know
what to make
what's
of
going on.
That's right. It's too much.
So yeah, I think it's, there's an element of that where you can't just look at tables of numbers.
Yeah.
You've got to pull back and say,
Look at your sales.
Yeah, look at what does this actually mean?
Yeah, right. Yep.
So yeah.
Yeah, there's been an interesting evolution that I've noticed since iOS 14 update, and the decimation of the return on ad spend metric inside the Facebook ads dashboard.
Yeah.
For e-commerce stores. The conversation can no longer be around what return on ad spend am I getting according to Facebook.
Yeah.
Because it's wrong.
It doesn't. Well,
right?
And it's irrelevant, going back to that frequency question, because you don't, when you look at Facebook as a medium, it's closer to a brand channel.
Yes.
And the chances that somebody's going to see one Facebook ad, one lonely Facebook ad, click on it, buy something, and, is limited.
Yeah, because we're not like fish. We don't just see bait and either take it or not, right?
Yeah.
It's way more complicated than that.
I mean, the reality of it is you'll probably scroll through the ad two or three times before you then click on it, look at it, say, yeah, that's kind of interesting, but I don't like buying things through Facebook, so now I'm going to go to Google and find it there.
Yeah, and read some reviews first, right?
So at that point, Facebook may get a click, but they don't get a conversion. And they'll only get the click off one of the 3 ads that got served to that person. And yet Google will be your CPA.
Yes.
And your tracking is going to tell you they're 2 separate people.
Yeah, and there's and also that the purchase is both platforms are responsible for the purchase if it's within that 7-day window.
Right. Yeah, tracking. Yeah.
So then you've got apparently according to all these different platforms, you've made $1 million this month.
Yeah,
and the sales are 100,000. So there's definitely that element of the complexity of our buying decisions that make it impossible to 100% watertight accurately attribute every sale, right?
But it also, I think, speaks to the importance of any organisation of any size understanding more about what the buyers are doing, and whether that's informal research where you just talk to people who buy your product and say what happened, how did you decide to buy me, and did you look at anyone else, and what was your process, or it's proper structured focus groups and quant studies and all that sort of stuff. Whatever you do on that spectrum, having a clue about what's going on for them really helps inform how you should do marketing.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Yep. Yeah, it's something that now with the ROAS being decimated in the dashboard and business owners no longer being able to hold, like digital marketers now have the perfect excuse when they're running Facebook ads and they say, oh, the ROAS has gone down, I'm not really getting a return according to the dashboard. You just say iOS, man. You know? Like it's stopped recording the sales now. And so the conversation has now turned into more of a conversation about your ad spend in total versus your total revenue as a store, right?
Well, and that's what I was going to say. Like as a CMO, we have to deliver monthly board reports. Now, if you go down the rabbit hole of channel analysis at the beginning, you're kind of screwed from the get-go. What you actually need to do and what you look at as a business is what am I spending on marketing overall, and where am I tracking both in terms of acquisition and retention or usage.
Yes.
And am I tracking from a time period perspective where I think I should be this month, or am I not?
Yes.
And if I'm tracking well, then I can go down into the channel analysis and go, yeah, this one looks like it's going better or worse.
Yep.
And likewise, if I'm doing poorly, where am I wasting money?
Yes.
But you got to start at the big picture to decide whether, you know, are you chasing a fail or are you chasing a success?
Yes.
You know, because that's, you know, there's different ways of looking at the information.
Yeah, cool. It's changing, right?
Yeah.
It's changing pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I think as far as the whole privacy versus security debate, to me, I think we're probably in line, relatively in line with that. With I don't care if people know what I'm doing. Like my can read my text messages or.
You must have a boring life.
I do. They would get very bored very quickly,
Yeah.
right? Like I'm way more interested
He's a
in.
father now. He was more interesting when he was younger.
Okay.
I was. You knew me. I've lost my mojo. Kids will do that, right? But I'm way more interested in security and relevant delivery of ads and all of that. I'd prefer that than just be able to walk around knowing that they're not able to track any of my data, right? Like,
You're a marketer's dream.
yeah,
Get him.
I'm a marketer.
Get
right?
him.
Yeah, I just don't see what the risk is in them being able to tag me with a pixel and deliver me with relevant ads, or
Yeah.
you know, like if it means that they can catch criminals that do horrible things and they can read my text messages, it doesn't bother me at all. You know, like
I think the challenge with it is people's misunderstanding about what it means.
Yes.
Right. So the first part of it is, you know, it's freaking anonymous.
right,
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, sure, they know that you looked at, you know, I don't know, a car last week.
yes,
Doesn't mean they know where you live or what your family is or any, you know, like they haven't, you know, they may make a guess at all that shit based on the other stuff that you've done, but they actually don't know.
yes,
And so the first misperception is that this means they know who you are.
Right.
They're watching you. It's a bit like, you know, akin to they've got a link into your webcam, which
Yeah,
is
yeah.
bullshit, you know.
right,
So that's the first misperception. The second misperception is this sort of inalienably, I can't say it. So
Please try it one more time because I want to know what this word is.
Inalienable.
Inalienable. You got it.
it's a good word.
Look it up, everybody.
But it's this right
Yes,
to have the world the way I want it to be.
Yes.
yes,
You know, and we've seen it obviously coming out in the whole COVID pandemic response.
Yes.
You know, like it's just
Oh, the June 6th riots in the US and I mean,
yeah. It's
so many
just
examples.
this. I don't want you to send me an ad,
yes,
so you know I don't want to see your ad, so I don't want you to have the ability to send it to me.
yes,
And then there's the third piece, which is the misperceptions about data, right? So the whole conspiracy theory that says, you know, like governments can track us and know who we are and all this sort of stuff. You know, I mean, sure, they do know a fair bit.
but why would they be interested in it? I mean, that's
realistically, why would they be interested in any?
The vast
Of a
majority
specific
of
person.
people,
Yeah.
Right.
they're
Well,
not.
I mean,
If you're not
think
doing
about
anything
NSA.
wrong.
Not
you
even
know,
you,
like
Wade.
they're interested in everybody, not just you.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
They
but
don't need a reason.
But-
It's
but-
retroactive, no?
yes,
It's
Yeah.
the reality check that needs to come into that, though, that I think gets missed.
Yes.
Right? So when you call Telstra, and you know, I hope nobody from
Please
Telstra
don't.
listens, but when you call Telstra
When you've
and
got
you
a
get
spare day.
moved between a few of their different call centres,
Yes.
it's very easy to determine that their data doesn't match up.
Yes.
Because one call centre you're talking to asks you all the same fucking questions, excuse my language.
Yes.
But as
Four times over.
4 times over.
right,
So they're clearly not looking at the same software screen
yes,
or the same database.
yes,
And I've worked with many of Australia's largest organisations, and I can tell you their data doesn't line up, and it's a massive issue, and there's some whole frickin' department sitting in the corner trying to figure out how to solve it.
yes,
The idea that they could put all of that information together and somehow come up with an intelligent plan of how to talk to you is
Yeah, yeah.
farcical, you know?
some matrix that's going to be able to use AI to crack our free will,
Yeah.
you know, and control us into doing things that we otherwise would not have done is I think the thing.
Yeah,
that,
it's the influence on your free will.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the thing.
The
It's like
psychological manipulation that
Yeah.
advertisers are apparently doing.
basically Apple's saying our users are incapable of being able to make their own buying decisions. So we're going to give them the ability to stop ads from tracking them because obviously they're being manipulated into
Yeah.
buying things that they shouldn't be buying, right?
Well, the whole the whole manipulation thing too, you know, like you spend enough time in creative agencies, and I'll piss off all my advertising friends by saying this, but the actual people talk about the psychographics and being manipulated by sophisticated messaging, right? The reality of what happens in an advertising agency is you meet with the client will tell you what the problem is, a planner will go off and come up with a strategy, which will then get presented to the creative department, who will completely ignore it and come up with an ad campaign that they think is going to win an award. You know, like that's kind of what happens in 9 times out of 10 cases. And along the way, you've got all these, you know, fabulously complicated PowerPoints that they present to a client and sell in around this strategy. And depending upon how good the PowerPoint is and how good the planner is or the creative director, the client may or may not buy it.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
And at what point do all those stakeholders have a chat with the end user and discover what they really want?
not often enough. And there's nothing an advertising agency hates more than consumer testing on their ad.
Yes.
You know, like I've thrown that one into the mix and they freaking hate it.
Yes.
And the reason they hate it is because 9 times out of 10 it results in having to go back and rework the creative.
Yeah, they say they don't like it.
Well, it's not working the way that the PowerPoint told you it was going to.
Yes.
And that's sort of the farce of when people say we're being manipulated by advertisers, because I actually sort of think, yeah, well, you know,
They're not that good.
They're not that good.
Competency level isn't quite there.
Yeah, overestimating the...
Overestimating
Maybe the
ability to
only one that
manipulate.
really gets you is food.
Yeah, right.
Food advertisements do get your
Yeah,
appetite
yeah.
going, and you kind of think,
That's
all
hard to-
right, McDonald's, I'll go
Well,
for
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
and the McDonald's example is a perfect one, right? Like you put an ad on TV at 6 o'clock at night with a nice juicy burger dripping fat. Sure, you know, like that is potentially, one could argue, a manipulation.
Gonna mean a lot of people are eating burgers that they otherwise wouldn't have been eating. That they shouldn't be eating, and that they have little to no control over not eating.
Well, especially if you add the value, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Tell me on the radio to get the My Macca's app.
Yes.
We'll give you a $2 Big Mac today.
Yeah.
Like, that's pretty compelling.
It works. It does work. We see here in the office, like someone will stand up. Usually it's Adeline or Rossi.
Olivia.
will go, oh,
Giving
there's
out
a
office
KFC
secrets.
promo. There's, you know, and then
Oh,
the next thing you know, the office is full of KFC.
There's no question that suggestion definitely drives response.
Yes.
You know, a carefully timed suggestion drives response. I mean, that is what the marketing game's all about. So I don't want to give the impression that I don't think marketing's capable of working.
Yes.
But at the same time, it's nowhere near as sophisticated as people seem to perceive.
You're not seeing an ad for some shoes because you are ready to buy shoes at that moment. You're seeing that same ad in line with tens of thousands of other people.
Yes.
Well, yeah. Well, unless of course you've been to the website and looked at those shoes and.
But even then, there's
there's
a minimum audience size, right?
Yeah.
You can't. That's been there since the start of remarketing.
Yeah.
You can't pick one visitor
Yeah.
because otherwise you could manipulate people in a sense. You could almost like social engineer. You know, I could go to you, hey Jenny, check out our new landing page on your phone. And you open it up, and then I know that you are the person. I can follow you around with ads and say, "Hey, Jenny," in a banner ad.
Well, is that partial to the QR codes? You know, not necessarily with the check-in, but you know when you go to a restaurant and that menu is on a QR code.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, QR codes are kind of interesting, I think, right? Because they were out in Asian countries. Oh, Jesus, 12, 15 years ago, maybe.
We needed COVID to make them,
We
you
needed
know,
COVID
work.
to make
Yes.
it work.
Like that was the
yeah.
perfect storm because
entire-
no one knew what to do with them.
Yeah.
There are
Right.
entire Chinese cities that operate through WeChat for their payment
Yeah.
systems. Essentially, there's no
Yeah.
cash, there's no credit card information. It's just on your mobile phone. I
QR
scan
code.
your QR code, you scan mine.
Yeah, right.
Transfer
And
money.
I think QR codes, they actually breathe new life into outdoor advertising, for instance. You know, like it's the ability to create interactivity off a physical thing. You know, and even
You
for
kind of
instance,
you're stopping. You're not looking at your screen anymore. There's actually a physical object in the real world
To
that
look at.
you're interacting with. Yeah.
And the other place I've seen it work really well is, you know, so in stores where you put QR codes with more detailed product information on, you know, sort of
Items.
items.
Yes.
And that brings people in.
Yes.
But then also, of course, you know, it's like it's cheaper than a search ad.
It's also a massive opportunity to connect your brand with your customer, right?
Yeah.
I mean, an out-of-home billboard or advertising medium where you're able to say, you know, we think you're interested. Well, who knows? This is super scattergun, but if you are interested, grab this
Here's
code.
how to get it. Yeah.
Like connect into your little cyborg world, and
You can go have a look.
Cyborg world.
Well,
Yeah,
I
man.
mean, I hate walking into shops and having sales assistants walk up and say, "Can I help you?"
Yeah.
It's like, no, go away.
actually now I'm going to leave.
Yeah. Whereas the ability to get the information you might be interested in without having to engage with
Talk
them.
to a human.
Yes.
I know, it sounds
You know how much
sad,
we all
doesn't
hate
it?
doing that.
Stop talking to me. I'm shopping.
Salespeople in retail. You know what I mean? You know when you're walking in and someone's like, "Can I help you?" And you, oh, man, here we go. You know.
We've got this classic. I was in a underwear shop, and I was buying something, and the woman goes, "Got anything exciting on for tonight?" And I'm thinking, "What the fuck? I'm going to tell you."
Yes, I have actually. His name's, you know. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of opportunities in channels that we haven't really explored.
Yes.
That continues to evolve. That's what excites me. And I think back to your first question, which is what do I like about marketing? It's actually the stuff that changes. Like it's about fundamentally shifting what an organisation does and how it does it.
Yes.
That I find
And
exciting.
that improves the
their return. Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like you in that way, Jenny. I love coming up with ideas or working on ideas that work. You know, when it all comes together at the end, and you can see a marketed improvement. You know, in the results. Then that's something that I get a kick out of. And technology as well, like, has changed the world so quickly and so rapidly. You know, you've never been able to reach so many people with such little effort.
Yeah.
You know, so that's changed the marketing game big time as well. I think, you know, I can literally pull a device out of my pocket, spend 10 minutes writing an ad, put some money behind it, and tens of thousands of people are going to see that ad within the next couple of hours, you know, which is just gnarly. Like, it's nuts.
Yeah.
And it's been interesting to see how that intertwined now with the COVID thing has affected how people, like, you know, the last pandemic we had, there was not conspiracy theories being shoved in people's faces about that pandemic all day long, every day.
Depends what you consider a pandemic.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Well, we actually only had one pandemic. You mean lockdowns?
Yeah, lockdowns and
Yeah.
the whole the whole COVID thing, you know, is
Well, I think the first lockdown we were all a bit in shock about, you know.
It was a novelty. It was
Yeah.
fun. It was like
Yeah.
Brave New World. What's
yeah,
happening?
The novelty did
Yeah.
wear off.
I can't even wipe my ass.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, it's an interesting study in human behaviour and response, though.
Yes.
You know, I was reading, and it has an impact, I think, on marketing. You know, I was reading this article about a book that was written like 10 years ago about people's response to pandemics.
Yes.
And it pretty much predicted everything that happened in terms of, you know, the conspiracy theories and then the pushback and then the alienation of some, you know, parts of society
Yep.
and what the, you know, attitudes were between the different people.
Yes.
And apparently this person wrote the book, took it to publishers, and they said, yeah, it's kind of interesting, but, you know,
We're not publishing.
we're not relevant. It's not relevant, you know. But now,
Yeah.
of course, it's you can't even buy it. So
Yes.
popular.
Yes.
But I think what you see in that is that if you push too hard, that's when people push back.
Yes.
You know, that's when you've got an issue.
Yes.
But it's a bit like that bell curve of the critical mass,
Yes.
where eventually you get to this point where there's enough people who kind of buy the narrative
Yeah.
Yes.
that it just becomes that's the mainstream narrative and everybody else is just a...
Weirdo.
A crackpot.
I didn't say that. but,
Fringe
you know.
dwelling, you know.
Well,
Yeah,
they're
Alternative.
They're marginalised to the point where they don't matter.
Yeah,
Their
right.
opinion doesn't matter.
Yeah, yeah.
But not anymore, thanks to social media. Which
Well,
gives you this.
no, I don't even know that that's true, you know, because...
Well, they banned Trump from Twitter, so,
Yeah.
you know,
Creating his own social media platform.
innovation, baby.
Yeah.
The truth.
The truth.
Yeah, it's something though. Hey, like they've had to mandate the vaccine, right?
Yeah.
For example,
Yeah.
because of social media, in my opinion. You know, I really think that that's why. I think that people just kind of the information age and people having a voice
yeah.
with no career on the line. You know what I mean? With no no blowback.
Or no information.
And no information. It's like if you wanted to publish something 30 years ago that would be read by thousands of people.
Well, I don't know
Yeah,
if
it
it's
had to
no
have peer review.
information.
Yeah.
It's too much information, right?
What's that?
We have too much information
Yeah,
to
definitely.
make a kind
An
of
informed decision because there's
well,
so many.
it's an informed decision, but
It's
you know,
informed by who?
You
and
can
from
find information that backs up your viewpoint.
always.
whatever
Yeah,
it
that's
is.
the internet.
Now.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You can make a decision on what you've decided is the most convenient for you to believe, and then go and find as much information as you want to back that up.
Yeah.
I suppose.
Yeah.
So it's powerful. You can see the power behind digital and the transformation of the information age, and that for me, Jenny, back to what you were saying about it being exciting is the combination of that with digital for me is something that I think is fascinating to watch change so quickly, and how people have been able to. You can change the world from your lounge room within minutes.
Yeah, I think though, if you look at regulation stuff, the essence of it is about starting to shift the onus onto, marketers and brands to have an ethical approach to how they do that.
Yes.
And I think you can see from like the banks and all insurance companies who are putting a higher and higher level of importance on trust.
Yes.
And how they build trust. And I think that's going to start rolling down to smaller brands.
Yes.
As being a really important factor.
Yep.
Like, how do you establish trust? How do you behave,
Yes.
ethically? How do you listen to your customers and all those sorts of things,
Yes.
just in terms of differentiators that actually matter.
Yeah. Well, also, if you break trust and get a bad reputation, you're done these days as well, right?
Oh, forever.
There's there's
Cancelled.
well, it's recorded online forever. You know what I mean? Every single bad review, every single every single kind of court process you go through and things like that, it's all out there for people to find. And
Well, it's a classic thing, actually. I remember, so product review is an interesting one because if it's kind of a blind spot, you're not looking at it, and you get a bunch of bad reviews, then it's like really bad. But the effort you have to put into fixing it is substantial.
Yeah.
Because it's actually not that hard to get people to give you a bad review because ultimately the only people who can be bothered reviewing you are the people that have
motivated by how pissed off they are.
correct, yeah. But to get people to give you a good review requires you to actively say to them, hey, if you enjoyed that, give us a good review.
Yes.
So it's actually not that hard to
Get a bad
reputation.
Yes.
But it's a lot of work and requires proactivity to get a good one.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we've seen that with and it has a significant impact.
Yeah.
On people's results because people do look at reviews before they make a buying decision.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
That sounds like a wrap up.
Oh, really?
I don't
You can't
know.
deal with the silence? Is that what's going on
I can
here?
sit here all day in silence.
Yeah, right.
I don't know if our audience can.
Yeah, we've been talking for a while.
Have we? Yeah, cool.
Nearly an
53 minutes and 2 seconds to be precise. Jenny, this has been great. Thanks.
You're
I really
welcome.
appreciate you coming in.
Yeah, yeah. Happy to help.
We'll have to get you back in again soon. You can bring
Eunice.
Eunice, yeah. She can sit somewhere comfortably on your lap, apparently, is where she likes to sit. So, cool.
Any shameless plugs that you want to use as platform for?
Nah, it's all good. It's all good.
Cool. Thanks, Jenny. Thanks, guys. Let's wrap this up.
Bye.
Peace out.
All right.